and I can't drink most water. So I'm kind of the exception to the rule. I personally have dealt with a lot, and our entire family, we're essentially a house of allergies, right? So each of the kids has a special diet for food allergies. Their dad has something. Everybody's got something. And so combined, we are very special. And so that has created a scenario where we are what's called a mixed allergy household. So I'm going to share with you guys a presentation. Okay, a mixed allergy household. Technology for the win. So it's defined as when more than 2 people live in a home and at least one of them has food allergies and no one's the same. So in the example here, person 1 has celiac disease, number 2 is egg and tree nut free, number 3 has oral allergy syndrome, and number 4 has no known allergens, which means no 2 people are the same in their household and they will be making a lot of accommodations. An example of a home that's not mixed would be when everyone requires the same diet, so maybe everyone is gluten-free. Now, something I want to show you guys, if you can see that tiny little dot that the arrow is pointing to, that's 20 parts per million. And here's what that means. The entire white box, that was 1 million pixels, and that tiny little dot was 20 parts per million, so 20 pixels within that million. Michelle's asking if I need tech support. Michelle, can you see everything okay? If I'm live and kicking, let me know. Hopefully it's going well. So those 20 parts per million, if you get certified gluten-free foods from USDA certified organic, they have to test as 20 parts per million or lower. And with some GF certifiers, it's 10 parts or lower. For some people with an allergy, they can consume 0 parts per million. So when you see that tiny little dot, that can help you understand just how tiny these food particles are and why keeping everything super clean is so important. In my personal case, 0 parts per million is my threshold. For one of our kids, for certain items, 0 parts per million is his threshold, which means, oh, it's great to see your face too. In fact, okay, pause, time out. I don't know if you guys know this or not. So I have to wear a full face respirator to leave the house safely. That's how severe my allergy is. Like I said before, I am airborne allergic to certain items. I've been to several Nourish festivals all over the country. I've been a speaker at several, and no one's ever seen my face until this one, which it's kind of funny because they were like, oh, that's what you look like. So for those of you who've never seen me before, because you always have to see me in a respirator, this is what I look like underneath. So yeah. All right, back to our presentation though. So 0 parts per million sometimes is the threshold for some people. Now, what's really important to remember, number 1, no 2 people are the same. Knowing your level of sensitivity, like I said, I'm 0 parts, one of our kids is 0 parts, that's really important as well. What you purchase, it really matters because that will help determine how you live and thrive safely, right? Are you purchasing foods made on shared equipment with what you're allergic to or what you're intolerant to, or can you have it? Can you purchase foods made in the same facility? Now, here's a fun activity you can do at home. If you take a bag of flour or any kind of powder like cacao powder, and you just kind of go like this with it, or if you close it down but not slowly, what you'll see is a little poof, this puffy dust cloud, and that's those parts per million spreading all over your kitchen, okay? And so when we talk about 0 parts per million, when we talk about shared facilities and shared equipment, those are the types of imagery you should be thinking about. How does this facility, how does this company, how does this XYZ work to keep me safe? That's what's really important. So for those of you who cannot do trace amounts, 0 parts per million is going to be your number. So getting food made at the very minimum on equipment not shared with the item would be your go-to. Now, let's talk about the basics. Let me share the screen with you guys. All right, so these are some basics for celiac disease, food allergy, and food intolerance. I'll let you guys kind of take a look at that. A food allergy is IgE mediated and can be life-threatening. A food intolerance is not. However, one of the key hallmarks is that it can last for up to 28 days in some people, okay? The US top 8 allergens are wheat, dairy, egg, soy, peanut, tree nut, fish, and shellfish. Gluten falls with wheat, but rye and barley contain wheat, but are not, or I'm sorry, contain gluten, but are not wheat. So if you see something that's top 8 free, that doesn't necessarily make it gluten free. Just how if you see something that's gluten free, that doesn't necessarily make it wheat free. Because if it's gluten free, made on shared equipment with wheat, and it has, let's say, 18 parts per million, it's not wheat free for someone who needs 0 parts per million. So it's really important to understand the lingo combined with your personal level of sensitivity and comfort. If you find that your mental health suffers because you're constantly worried, like, oh my goodness, what am I going to eat? That's where getting food from either a free from facility or free from equipment will bring you so much peace of mind, okay? So much. I cannot stress that enough. I know for our home, it's so easy for me to just do things, take care of business. It's no big deal because I'm getting raw materials. We're cooking from scratch. Our equipment is dedicated. I know what's going on. There's something to worry about. So having that level of comfort is really important too. Let's go back to our screen share. All right, so celiac disease, as many of you know, it's essentially a disease of your small intestines where it's hypersensitive to gluten, leading to a lot of health complications, okay? So these are some basic tips that I'm going to start out with on how to manage your mixed allergy household. So first and foremost, a high heat sanitizing dishwasher is a must. If you don't have one, I highly recommend you save up for one. It's really, really important. It will bring you more peace of mind. Disposable plates and cups and cutlery is a really easy way to not have allergens everywhere in your kitchen. We do this all the time. And so it means that it's one less dish to worry about that's going to spread things everywhere. It's just one less thing. Non-stick remembers. I always tell people this because non-stick remembers, especially cast iron, and here's what that means. If you make a grilled cheese sandwich in a cast iron pan, clean it out, and then make a gluten-free grilled cheese sandwich in the same pan, you will most likely transfer small amounts of gluten to that gluten-free bread. Non-stick remembers, especially cast iron, okay? So it's really important to know what items to separate. Non-stick is one of them. Have clear rules in your home, which is something that we've had really for, well, since the day of diagnosis, really. We've had very clear rules. And for example, snack bins, like that's on that screen that I showed you guys. I run a tight ship, you guys. Every child has their own snack bin, their own color, and it's labeled with their name. So when they were little, I made it very clear to them. And then honestly, it was like a 0 strike policy. If you violated the rule, anything good and tasty was taken away from you like that. They knew not to play around. You were not allowed to take anything from anyone else's snack bin, period. You were never allowed to give anything to anyone else, period. You could only give things to one of the grown-ups and let us know why you're giving it to us, like you don't like it or whatever. But you could never trade snacks with anyone. We taught them that from day one, and the system worked flawlessly. The only time it didn't work, it was my fault. The bins were stacked too high. Like there was too much stuff in them, and then it fell into the next one, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, won't do that again. But basically, once a week, I would go through, look at who had what, and just start filling up their snack bins. And what's funny is they are now all almost adults. Our youngest is 16 next week. They still use their snack bins. They just do. It's a force of habit. They just keep going to their little bins, and they know whatever's in it is for just them. So snack bins work wonders, and it gives you the peace of mind to walk away from it and say, division of responsibility. It's one less thing for me to worry about, because if you're always making snacks, oh my goodness, it's too much. The last big tip I want to give you is to think about glitter. If you remember the last time you had glitter around, it was awful, right? There was glitter on your hands, on your feet, all over your house, behind stuff, under stuff, where it actually, like, you'll find glitter in your garage, even though it was opened in the kitchen. Glitter. Think of allergens as glitter, okay? So those 20 parts per million, it's actually basically the size of glitter. So if there's glitter everywhere, think about how can I reduce the spread of glitter? Think about that. When you do, you'll start to visualize reducing the spread of allergens. Now, color coding is one of the easiest things you can do. First and foremost, be consistent inside your kitchen and your pantry. And here's what that means. Going back to assigning each person a color, whether it be children or adults. Let's say you have 3 kids, 3 different needs. One is blue, one is green, one is yellow. Number 1, they each have a corresponding snack bin in that color. Number 2, use, those little round stickers you can get at like office supply stores. If you need to have items in your pantry for whatever reason, stick their color on it so you know who it's for. And if you're feeling really overwhelmed with life and you just need like easy shortcuts, put all 3 stickers on if it's for all 3 kids so you don't forget. Whatever it takes for you to visually go, oh, I know who this is for, that's how you can totally make it work for your home. Now, for us, I pretty much shop for the greatest common denominator because I have to. We don't purchase certain brands because they contain corn, which I am severely anaphylactic allergic to, can't be in the house. So those items we don't even purchase. We have to purchase items made on dairy-free equipment. So a lot of other brands get slashed right off the bat. What I end up purchasing for the greatest common denominator, everyone can have. However, that may not be true for your home. And here's an example. If you have a toddler with food allergies, and only the toddler has food allergies, and you don't want to spend your life savings on feeding everyone the way the toddler eats. Let's assume this toddler has 17 food allergies and is a really complex case, okay? That means you're purchasing very specific items for just your toddler. Everything for your toddler needs to be clearly labeled, like stuck on. Hey, Jen, I love seeing you. Well, I can't see you, but you can see me. And by the way, Jen, thank you so much for putting this together. You and the team have done an amazing job. I'm so the whole community is blessed because you guys worked so hard, so thank you. Make sure you guys are putting stickers on the one thing for that one kid, whether it be something in the freezer for the child or in the pantry for the child. Obviously, that child can have a snack bin with the same color. And this not only helps you, but it helps your child as well, especially before they can talk or consistently communicate. Really great if their age is 7 and under, no confusion. I've seen a lot of families work with this method and it works flawlessly because the kids, they're just trained to recognize their symbol. Now, if you have a child that's really struggling with the diagnosis, what I suggest is whatever their favorite superhero is, and this is going to cost you a little bit more because you know how much stickers cost, but do it anyway, they're that superhero. So if they love Superman, they get the Superman sticker on everything. I actually did this for our kids for other things, not for their snacks. But I'm really organized. So they have like a shoe bin and a this bin and a that bin. And I had their little favorite superheroes and their names on them. And it was really cool. It's a really great way to just add a little flair to what might seem to be like overwhelming or make them feel different or sad even sometimes. So it's one little pep you can put in their step. If you are working with your kids, let's say they're diagnosed later in life, I'm talking 8 or older, let them help you. Let them pick out the color of their bins and pick out different things. Let them be a part of it. When you're doing the color coding, to give you guys a very clear example, our kids actually picked out the color. We wanted them to cook more. We wanted them to have more independence. And they said, we're afraid to cook in the kitchen because we're afraid that we're going to use the wrong thing and make someone sick. I was like, wow, that's really honest. So they picked the color red. Red means stop and think. If kid 2 cannot eat this food or is not eating this food, do not touch these appliances or these whatever they are. Everything was then purchased in red. What we did, actually fun story, our stove exploded. Well, exploded, but man, it scared us to death. So when we got our new stove, it was induction. We had switched over from non-induction to induction. So we had to get new pans anyway. We purchased a truck ton of pots and pans in red. All shapes and sizes. It's really great. We have a colander in red. In fact, we have 3 colanders in red. Everything you can imagine, it's in red. Or I've taken a Sharpie to it, and it's tipped in red. So like all of his wooden spoons are red tipped. Everything is red, okay? And they're separated physically. So we have a cabinet, a giant cabinet, full of red, a drawer full of red, and then a completely separate cabinet that holds the cooking items for everyone else, okay? And then my personal items are even separated outside of the kitchen with their own space. They're not as color coded, but everybody knows what mine looks like. And I go out of my way to purchase distinctly different items. And so sometimes people ask me, so what cookware do you love? I'm like, I don't know, because I don't stick to one brand, because I need them to be visually different. You have no idea, especially when they got older as teenagers and they were doing more chores. I had to lose so many pots and pans because mine looked too much like theirs. And for my allergy, we could take no risk. So then we'd have to buy a new set or a new this or a new that. And I finally said, I'm gonna buy something that looks so different, they can't accidentally poison me. And so that's where that came from. So make sure if you're in that kind of a situation, visually different, both by design and by color. Not everything you can do different by design, and that's where we got into trouble, because a silver pot is a silver pot, and the handles can only look so many different ways. So I personally use the brand called ELO. It's German. It's just ELO. They look so physically different from a standard American pan or pot that it works for us. All right. Make sure you guys have visually different sponges. This is especially critical for by hand items and if you don't have a dishwasher. If you don't have a dishwasher, again, time to start saving up for one. It's going to make your life easier. And I think it's really important that, so when you go on to like say Amazon or when you go into a grocery store, usually there's like a whole cleaning section and they have different types of sponges. We actually buy one of our sets from Costco and then we buy the other two online because they're visually different. We have one that's like blue and flat. We have one that's teal and incredibly bumpy like a mountain. It's really weird actually. I don't know who came up with it, but whatever. And then we have a purple one. And then we have a white one, right? We have completely visually different sponges. And then we have 4 sponge holders, each one labeled. Carlton has this little P-touch, so you type it in, it looks really professional. So he labeled our sponge holders for us. So it says like Kid 2 on one of them. It says bakery on one of them. It says allergen on one of them. Actually, I think they have, it says dairy. They have dairy written on it. And then there's my name on one of them, okay? 4 separate sets of sponges because we can't take any risk. So if you need to go to that level, number one, don't feel bad about it. I hear from so many people like, oh, it's really hard, or I feel bad about XYZ, or it's, you know, this or that. Forget all that, right? You do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. So if it means 4 sponges, 6 sponges, 10 sponges, whatever it is, do what you need to do. The other rule I have, we have one of those scrubby brushes. Anytime the scrubby brush touches an allergen, it goes into the dishwasher in the next load. So that's a really important rule to have. Next up, I want to go back to our slideshow. All right, when and how to separate. I'm going to leave this up while I talk to you guys. Items that you normally don't separate are silicone, glass, and knives. And the reason why has to do with deep scratches. When an item develops a deep scratch, that's usually when you need to replace it. Or if you think you're having a reaction to it, just replace the item. And if it's not that item, you need to start keeping a food journal until you can figure out what item is causing the issue. Items that you'll always want to double up on: cutting boards, kid-safe knives, pots and pans, especially nonstick, oven mitts, and then a toaster/toaster oven. Okay, I lied, I'm back. Here's what's funny about that. Think about an oven mitt, right? People, this is one of the biggest overlooked items, is the oven mitt. You've got a pizza tray, and the pizza's to the edge of the tray. You take your oven mitt, you grab the pizza, and if you're a child or a teenager, you're going to take that thumb piece and it's going to end up in the pizza, okay? My kids do it all the time. I look at stuff, I go, oh, I see you got this out of the oven, right? They pull it out, they take the oven mitt, they put it down. Well, think about your glitter. If that pizza were a tray of glitter, you would have glitter on the thumb portion and probably some right here. And when you go to use it again, you're going to take that glitter and stick it into the next item. Hence, separate oven mitts. In our house, you guessed it, they're all color-coded. We have a red set, a blue set, and a black set. Yes, we do. And they stay physically separated because, again, think of glitter. If you take the glitter from this glove and stack it on top of this one, and they all stack together, you've just got a stack of glitter, right? And so the red ones, they have a specific space in the kitchen. The blue one stays with all the bakery stuff, and the black ones stay outside the kitchen, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Now I'll go back to the presentation so you guys can read along with me. Okay, a toaster oven, and here's why, and I'll explain this later. We actually have 2 toaster ovens outside, and they look completely different. And that's because you don't want allergens just baking everywhere. Think about glitter. You're blowing glitter everywhere, right? Now, in the food industry world, if you put your oven, you crank it up to 500 degrees or higher for 15 minutes, it can burn off the allergens. That's a great way to do things. For people who cannot do that, or for whatever reason it doesn't work for them, you can double wrap items in foil if for some reason you only have access to the one oven. My personal hard line: if you don't have a dishwasher, you're cooking for the greatest common denominator, or you double up everything. There's no sharing whatsoever if you can't wash it. Even if it's glass or silicone, there's no doubling up if you don't have that dishwasher. Now, large and special appliances, I want to go over them individually and kind of give you guys some tips on how we manage them. We have a lot of appliances because, as you can imagine, we do a lot of recipe development. We have 1 air fryer, and we only put greatest common denominator items in the air fryer. We have a blender base. We have 3 separate blender containers. Ours is a Vitamix. You cannot wash the Vitamix containers, which is really frustrating. Fun story. In fact, I hope we have time for a story. When we first got our Vitamix, the first one, I was like, well, we have food allergies, so I'm sticking it in the dishwasher. I don't care what the instructions say. It broke. Like, it stopped working. So I called Vitamix. Our blender container doesn't really work anymore. And the first thing the lady says to me, did you dishwash it? And I said, well, I did, but, and then I told her why. And she goes, all right, here's the thing. We'll replace it, and then we'll give you 50% off your second container, since you have to have 2. And I was like, oh, really? Thank you. It was so great. So yeah, when they say don't dishwash it, they really mean it. Don't break the rule. You cannot dishwash your Vitamix containers. You will need to purchase a second or a third in our case. Now, you want to make sure they're very clearly labeled. On ours, we have, so there's the container. It's labeled on every side of the base. It's labeled on the handle. It's labeled on the top of the lid, on the removable portion of the lid, and on 2 sides of the top of the container itself. It clearly states who it's for, so that when you go to pick up that Vitamix, there's no doubt which one you're picking up. We also have each tamper labeled. Now, those go through the dishwasher. You have to relabel them with Sharpie every few washes. That's just a tip that we've learned the hard way. It's kind of lucky for us that 2 of them look different, but then the third one looks like the second one, so you have to be really careful, and it's actually stored separately since it's mine, but you get the idea. Label everything really well. Now, a deep fryer, we have 1 of those. We cook for the greatest common denominator in our deep fryer. We have 1 dehydrator, same thing. Greatest common denominator, think about glitter. Do you really want glitter blowing around your dehydrator? We have a food processor, again, greatest common denominator. And on the food processor, it's actually the perfect example why you have to do this. Over time, our food processor has developed scratches all over it on the inside, and it's plastic. While it can be dishwashed, there's some pretty good scratches in it. If you absolutely want to use allergens and non-allergens for whatever your situation is, get 2 of the containers. So you buy the base, and then you purchase 2 containers. Don't be afraid to reach out to the company, tell them a sob story, and see if they'll give you a little discount on your second container. You never know unless you ask, right? And then on your refrigerator, so I'll come back to this later, but we actually have too many refrigerators and freezers. It's a thing. But we keep allergens outside of the kitchen in a separate refrigerator-freezer combo. We have 1 ice cream machine that gets the common denominator. We have 1 juicer, common denominator. We have 1 meat slicer. In fact, it's one of our newest appliances. Well, you know why we had to wait so long? Because we had nowhere to put it. And so once we finally figured out where to put it, we decided only my meat gets sliced. That's why I bought it, because I really wanted like really thin meat. And I was like, ooh, maybe I should make lunch meat for the kids. We were like, nope, never mind. Because you have to wash it by hand. And you can see the little tiny grooves, and you can see how if it doesn't get perfectly clean, it's going to be a problem. So only my safe meat touches that meat slicer. The nice thing is we bought one that was very affordable. I think it was about $80. If I really, really, really want to make something for the kids, I'd just get a second meat slicer. But that's us. And I'd have to figure out where I'm going to store it. But if you can't do that, greatest common denominator, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, that's going to be the answer to your problem. We have a multi-cooker, which is very similar to an Instapot. The inside pot is non-stick. Only the greatest common denominator goes in there. I don't use that item, so I put items that I can't have, like chicken and pretty much everything, inside of it, but I don't use it. So it's the greatest common denominator except for me. We have a Nutri-Milk, which makes dairy-free milk, and if you don't have one, oh my goodness, you need one. It's so cool. It reduces your time. It increases your yield. You save money over time. If you can do shared equipment with major allergens, you don't need a Nutri-Milk. It's cool, but like it's not a necessity. But if you're dairy-free and nut-free, or dairy-free and corn-free, or just corn-free, yeah, one of those three, I had to think about it. You need one. No one's really doing top 8 free milk from top 8 free equipment. So when you have one, you can make your own. And then you can make your own spreads and butters and all sorts of other things, and it's really cool. But we have one of those, and we only use 2 things in it. That's it. Never anything else. We have a double oven. The bottom oven is for me. The top oven is for everyone else. We have 1 rice cooker, greatest common denominator. We have 3 stand mixers. I know. Greatest common denominator for the most part. We have 1 tortilla press, and it's electric. Oh my goodness, you guys. If you don't have an electric tortilla press that cooks and presses at the same time, you have not lived yet. It's so cool. You got to get one. And it gets the greatest common denominator. And we use parchment paper every time we use it because it's very difficult to clean. We have 1 waffle maker that has actually a really funny story behind it. So I saw these waffle makers that had 2 compartments. You open the top, you put in the batter, you close it, you flip it over, open it again, put in your batter, close it, flip it back over, right? Super cool. So I'm like, I'm going to get one. I'll use the top for 1 kid. I'll use the bottom for everybody else. I'll label it. It'll be great. I used it the first time. And just making the greatest common denominator item, I went, yeah, no. It's just greatest common denominator on this. So they only eat greatest common denominator waffles. No one complains. Everyone's happy. And I don't need 2 waffle makers. So I do recommend, though, double waffle maker. It's made by Warren Pro. It's so fast. And you don't have to flip pancakes. We all know I'm team waffle because you get to put them in and walk away. We have 1 yogurt maker, and that's mine. I have yet to master yogurt making, but it only ever touches my ingredients. And those are all of the large and special appliances that we own. And those, again, are all the tips, if you get something like it, on how to manage it. And again, it's mostly just using the greatest common denominators. Now, what is the greatest common denominator? It's looking at what does person 1 avoid, person 2, person 3, person 4, etc. Okay? And when I combine them all together, let's say you're combining them and they avoid 15 items. With those 15 items removed, that's your greatest common denominator, right? In our home, greatest common denominator would be me minus bison, because kid 2 can't do any type of red meat. Well, me minus bison is basically nothing, right? They can have maple syrup and cassava flour with me. Woo! So we don't cook for me. We cook for kid 2 and then the other items. So our greatest common denominator that I cook for regularly are wheat, dairy, egg, all red meat, anything from a cow, coconut, and refined sugars. That's our greatest common denominator. If I do that, everybody eats in one go. But our kids have nutritional needs as well, like for medical purposes. So it's really hard to always cook greatest common denominator. I'm always cooking this for that person, that for this person, freezing things so that I'm not constantly cooking. I can pull from the freezer. And let's go back to our slideshow. So the pros of greatest common denominator cooking: everyone eats the same meal. It's great for inclusion because everything looks the same. No one feels left out. This is especially important if you have a little kid and you need to model the behavior of them eating, like, say, broccoli or whatever the case may be. There's less kitchen management because you're not doubling up on so much stuff, and your cost goes down usually because you didn't have to double up on things. The cons of greatest common denominator cooking, the cost. If the greatest common denominator is someone like me, to give you a terrible example, it's not if I were to feed everyone my bison plus a vegetable, $45 for one meal. And you know they're not full and they're coming back for dessert, okay? That's $45. Normally it's only $20 to feed them. So if I have to start doubling or tripling our costs, and mind you, that was just a 2-ingredient meal with salt, okay? If I want to get fancy and add something else or add a piece of fruit, oh my goodness, now it's $60 for one meal. That's the cost factor with greatest common denominator cooking, okay? So if I separate and cook one thing for kid 2, one thing for the rest, one thing for me, I could bring our costs down a bit more, but my exhaustion level goes up. So you have to remember your time and your energy are worth something too, and you have to factor that into the cost factor. Going to go back to our share. Now, nutritional considerations, here's what I mean by that. Our youngest child physically needs a certain style of food, including red meat. Our second oldest child cannot eat red meat. That's the problem. So they don't eat together every single meal. They generally have a different track for at least one meal a day. And everybody, oh my goodness, our house is so complicated. I won't bore you guys with the details, but it's complicated. Taste and preference and or picky eating, that's going to be a consideration to make. And then, of course, social aspect of over-catering. Here's the thing. Hi, Tracy. Here's the thing about over-catering. Our kids with dietary restrictions will find out the hard way one day that life does not revolve around their diet, and they have to cope with that. Now, do we shove that in their faces at home? Absolutely not. Do we show them how to eat differently sometimes at home? Probably, right? I think if I were to over-cater, I already know I over-cater to my kids, but if I were to over-cater, especially more to kid 2, I think his feelings, because he's a really sensitive kid, like emotionally, I think he would be a little more hurt when he goes out into the world because he'd be like, oh, I can't have that, and I can't have that. And he would see everything he can't have. So that's part of the reason snack bins, I think, really helped our home, because he saw they ate something different, right? And that's okay. I think it's okay for our kids to learn that lesson really gently over time. Again, don't shove it in their faces. In fact, I've had some parents ask about this, about inclusion with their little kids and their concern. And I always say, if it's really a huge concern and for whatever reason you can't afford to eat their food, etc., serve yourself a super small portion and eat with them, and then eat a standard meal later by yourself. And sometimes you just have to do that because that's what your kid needs emotionally at that stage in life. It doesn't last forever. Let's go back to our screen share. Okay, compromises that we make in our home. Allergens can be consumed outside of the house, so picnics and restaurants. Packaged snacks can contain allergens depending on how old they are. When they were little, I was a lot more strict about which allergens they could have with their snacks. Now that they're older, I'm a little more relaxed on that. A really great resource for you guys is the advanced recipe search on Raise. Let me pull that up for you guys so you can see it. I better not do that. This whole computer just jumped on me, and I'm like, oh no, that looks bad. Let's go over to Raise. So we've built out a platform for people with food allergies and special diets. And we have what's called the advanced recipe search. And let's see if I can't share that screen with you. There it is. Okay. So when you're on Raise, you can go to raise.theallergychef.com or goraise.net. You click on advanced recipe search here, and then you scroll down. You can, right now the website's at about 300 recipes, and that'll be going up very soon. So let's say you want pea and pea protein free, and this is how you can easily get greatest common denominator foods. Let's say you can't do berries, or citrus, and you need it to be oat-free and celery-free. And as you scroll down here, oh, and let's say you want FPIES friendly too. You scroll down here and every recipe that meets your needs loads right away. And what's really cool is the URL becomes a custom URL, so you can save it and go back to it later. So it's a really, 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 really advanced, powerful tool. There's nothing else like it online right now where you can select, right now it's got over 75 choices between individual allergens, food families, and special diets. So paleo, GAPS, AIP, SCD, vegan, EOE, FPIES, and I think, low histamine, and a couple others. So you can literally see your greatest common denominator and start cooking for that. All right, organizing tips, because quite frankly, I think that's why we're all here, right? How do I go about organizing this super crazy life of mine? People oftentimes ask me, they're like, Kathlena, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know, I just do it. Well, I'm hyper organized. So these are my best tips. Number one, color code. And I shared that with you earlier. Everything is very, very, very color coded. And that's one easy way to visually remind yourself. Number two, label everything with Sharpies. Even the items that are not your greatest common denominator items, if that's necessary, so that you don't forget. Number three, separate storage areas. So if it's for greatest common denominator, it goes into cabinet A. For everyone else, cabinet B. When you're new, cook at separate times as well. Don't try to do that thing where you're like, oh, let me just cook everything all at once. No, you're going to mess up. Cook the meal for person A, take a little break. Person B, take a little break, and so forth. Batch cook and feed on a rotation, and here's what I mean by that. If person A requires whatever, make a double batch of their food, freeze the extras. Then tomorrow night, they're eating from the freezer while you make a double batch for person B. And then on Wednesday night, A and B eat from the freezer while you double batch for C. And then on Thursday night, A, B, and C eat from the freezer while you double batch for person D. And then you continue. And as you do this, they end up with a freezer full of options, and you're not cooking for every single person every single time. Practice sink clearing, which really means, so in our, we kind of say it as, is the sink clear? And what that means is if there's anything in the sink that is allergen free, you cannot bring an allergen into the kitchen or into the sink. The sink must be completely empty before you can walk in your dirty dish that contains an allergen to rinse it and put it in the dishwasher right away. And buy dishwasher safe items wherever possible so that it's going through your high heat sanitization and killing off anything that's left over. Now, you're going to spend a lot of time in your kitchen, so make sure it works for your brain and that you love your appliances. A lot of times I think people kind of look at our house and they're like, I don't know how you afford that. Here's the answer. We have old cars. We don't buy clothes like new or like, well, we buy new clothes, but we really don't buy them that often. We don't eat out. We, in fact, up until like last year, I had 2 pairs of shoes. How many women do you know with 2 pairs of shoes? It was me. In fact, the only reason I have more than 2 is because I doubled up when I found, because they discontinued the shoe that I love. And I was like, oh no. So I bought 2 pairs. Yeah, that's what I do, right? So where most people are going on trips and doing this other stuff, we're like, do you want any Vitamix? Yeah, okay, I'll take any Vitamix, right? So that's really what it is. It's just prioritizing how you spend. And always remember too, this is a season, right? Oh, really big piece of advice for you guys. If you have a child with food allergies and you yourself do not have food allergies, or maybe you have, let's say, a 2-year-old with food allergies, a 10-year-old with food allergies, and an 18-year-old with food, well, let's jump back, a 13-year-old with food allergies. And they're all different, okay? And right now you're cooking for greatest common denominator. I want you next week to go out and open up 3 savings accounts at your bank. And every month you're gonna put $20 in each account. And you're just gonna let that sit and grow. When your 13-year-old in 5 years goes to move out, let's say they go to college, you say, hey, I've got a present for you. You open up that savings account and you buy them any appliance that they need, okay? They need a blender, do they need a hot plate, do they need an XYZ? Because these items cost a lot. And if you're sending them to college, that costs a lot too. But you're gonna be hit up with a lot of expenses. So start saving as soon as you know they have a diagnosis. $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. I once did the numbers, and if you do it long enough, the kid walks away with like a $5,000 kitchen account, and you can get every appliance with $5,000. Okay, they're getting a dehydrator, a KitchenAid, a Nutrimilk, a Vitamix. They get it all. They get the Cadillac experience. And the reason this is also important, if you have that 13-year-old moving out in 5 years and the 2-year-old still needs the appliances at home, you can't just let them take your appliances, right? I know some parents do that. They let the kid take the appliance. They're like, oh, I'll need an upgrade or whatever. You may not have that opportunity. So start saving right now while you can. I'm not kidding. Start the bank account next week, and $5, $10, $20 a month, and just forget about it. And when they need it, it's literally going to be a life-saving gift. So if you take nothing else from this whole thing today, that's what I want you to take from that. Now, back to our presentation. Here's what it looks like in our house to keep everything organized. First and foremost, right behind me over here is the big cabinet, and it's got everything red. We even have 2 big Berthas. That's what we call them. There's this giant pot for like 5 quarts, and they're huge, and it's really great. So we got like 2 of those. Everything I ever need to like batch cook 5 meals in one go, because I do that sort of thing all the time. Like I'm kind of all over the place, you know. So I'm prepared. I'm prepared for the greatest common denominator. And then in a separate cabinet over here, there's a whole different set of tools, a different colander, a different sieve, a different whole batch of like wooden spoons. Porous materials are terrible to share amongst allergens. Do not share wooden utensils especially. They have metal utensils, plastic utensils, mixing bowls, everything they need in that cabinet. They know where to find it. They know where it belongs. They even have their own like cheese grater, right? We have 3, 4, actually. We have 4 of those in our house. Oh, I hate that. And I can't believe it. Okay. So that's the kind of house we live in. Now, bakeware is always greatest common denominator. I do not bake anything with an allergen, period. And that's the easiest way to deal with that. And then our silverware drawer has a few red items, but we have a whole front room full of like cutlery that's all plastic and disposable, paper plates, paper bowls, paper cups, all of it disposable. So that all helps with not spreading glitter, right? Put the glitter on the paper plate. Oh, the other thing too. So let me just go in a way that makes sense. So here we have our main kitchen, right? Greatest common denominator, cooking tools and spices and all these things, okay? We have some storage areas over there, dry ingredients, more storage, right? All these things. We have our double ovens, and then underneath we have more pans, okay? Then we have our regular fridge and freezer, and then we've got 2 things for the bakery. Bakery has its own stuff. That's inside the physical kitchen. Then in the next room, so we have a wall and a door between the kitchen and the front room. Our front room is like what we call it the front room kitchen, right? It's a cute little thing. It's got a credenza we have a Vitamix in the kitchen. We kept our old one that's like kind of broken. And we got a new one, and it stays outside the kitchen because the kids like making cashew drinks, but we don't allow cashews in our kitchen. So they get to use that outside the kitchen, right? And then we have a separate mini, it's the largest mini fridge before you go to the kind that's like kind of tall, right? And it has like a tiny freezer, like you can fit ice cream in it if that counts for anything. And you can put anything with an allergen out there. So dairy, egg, wheat stays out there, okay? And then we have the outside kitchen. Now the outside kitchen is necessary in our lives because I have an airborne allergy to so much. So outside they have one of those outside style tables, that doesn't get ruined in the rain. 2 toaster ovens that look completely different. One for kid 2, one for everyone else, and his is smaller than theirs because he's one person and they're 3 people, so that they can put more stuff in it. They also have a hot plate. And what else do we have out there? I think those are the 3 things. And then in the front room, there's a garbage can in the front room, the kind where you don't have to touch it. It's touchless. So allergens, like when I say they don't enter the kitchen, the only thing that enters the kitchen is your pan that you cooked in. And if the sink is not clear, it does not enter the kitchen, which is why on any given day, if you visit my house, you'll see like 4 pans just sitting on the dining room table, just waiting, just waiting. It's a strange place to walk into, but it works, and we've never had a problem. Now, I always recommend do not run out to buy the most expensive items. I buy nice quality, but not expensive pans, pots, etc., because you have to be willing to part with them and just toss them. And we've had this happen on a few occasions. The most recent one was really heartbreaking. It was the only pot for boiling pasta. And kid 3 thought he was being helpful. It was totally an accident, which is why I tell people it's an accident and accidents will happen and that's okay, right? So he picked up a box of jovial pasta, which contained wheat. But the kids are so used to seeing jovial gluten-free pasta, he thought it was gluten-free, which actually led me to believe that those boxes are not well labeled. Like gluten-free, contains wheat, they're not well labeled on the front. Because my kid picked it up, thought it was gluten-free, because all the jovial pasta is gluten-free, right? He used Kid 2's red pot, thinking it was safe, boiled pasta, made pasta with our free from pasta sauce, which is expensive. And thankfully, Kid 2, for whatever reason, was not hungry at that moment, and he decided he didn't want to eat dinner. So I walk away, I walk back, and I go, oh, you made pasta for everyone. I look, oh my goodness, what did you do? He's like, what? I made pasta for everyone. Isn't this great? And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet of you. Throw away the pot. And they were like, what? I said, it's wheat. You didn't know it. And they were like, where is it? What? And then we actually examined the box. And like, I'm not kidding. It did not scream, I am wheat. Do not use me anywhere on this box. Okay. And we had to throw it away. And then I went a year without a pasta pot because I couldn't find a good size. So we were boiling pasta in these tiny little pots just because it worked. But when I say be ready to toss it, I really mean it. And that's probably the 10th pan we've tossed. I just tossed them. When the kids were little and I did all the cooking, anytime the pans got too scratched, tossed them, moved on. For me, the peace of mind that comes with not having to deal with it, I don't mind, I'll pay the extra $30 to buy a new pan. It's not worth the stress of whatever, right? And that's why I always tell people too, non-stick remembers, which is why we did not own cast iron. Our child with the most food allergies, after he turned 19 years old is when I bought our first cast iron pan, and I only bought it to make one of those giant cast iron cookies for him. That was the only reason I bought it. And then we made a cast iron pizza, and then we never used it again. So we have like 2, and that's it. We made it twice. And okay, can I tell you guys? Now the rest of them are like, you made him a cast iron cookie? I never had a cast iron cookie. Will you make me a cast iron cookie? I'm like, because I'm always doing this. I always go, hey, you've never had such and such before, and I'll make it. And they go, I never had such and such. So it's really funny. But those are my best tips, and that's what it looks like in our home. Now, I want to show you guys one more slide. And this is really just a collection of tips for those of you, especially when you're new, if you are still not feeling well, okay? Let's say you've been diagnosed and you're gluten-free and maybe you're dairy-free as well. You're not feeling well. Food journal is an absolute must. Do not skip out on it. Be very, very strict. Source single ingredients where you can, and then make items from scratch. Make sure you're purchasing sealed bulk items. If you go to the bulk section of a grocery store and they sell the individual 5-pound bags, it's usually been broken down from a 50-pound bag, which means it's been on shared equipment with something. But if you buy the 50-pound bag, it's direct from the manufacturer, sealed. For people like myself, do you have safe water? Turns out water makes me sick if it's not from a specific place. Do you need a 4-day food rotation? Have yourself tested for vitamin and mineral deficiencies because those can sometimes mimic a food allergy or an intolerance. Are your seasonings safe? This is a big one that most people overlook. How sensitive are you? Your overall gut health. And there are some tests that your GP or GI can help you order to do like a gut flora check. Your stress levels are really important as well. Untreated inflammation. And then of course, other unknown medical conditions, which takes you back to the food journal. It's kind of like one big giant circle. Your food journal is king. It tracks all your symptoms. It can help with the diagnosis. It can help you eliminate bothersome or troublesome foods and also track your ongoing reactions and failures of new foods. Now that's the end of my presentation. We've got some special gifts and savings for you guys. This weekend, you can save 50% on the first month of your Raise membership. Check out using the code NOURISHED. And if you sign up for our Diamond membership, you'll receive a package of our top 8 allergy-free chocolate cake mix. It's award-winning. It's top 8 free, vegan, gluten-free, truly corn-free. Everything comes from a top 8 free, gluten-free facility. We use dedicated equipment. It's pretty radical. And then, of course, I have some really great free items I'd love to share with you guys, regardless or not if you have a Raise membership. But you'll need to send us your email address. So you can either visit goraise.net and fill out the contact form, or if you look at the presentation page for how you got to this presentation, there's a button where you can hit something. Basically, send us your email address. And then I will reply with a collection of really great resources and guides for you guys, and a few recipes as well. Gluten-free, top 8 free, really great stuff. And then, of course, if you want to stay in touch, let me show you that screen. In fact, the email address is on that screen, which is probably really helpful, considering I said you should email us. So, raise.theallergychef.com, that's the main website where we're putting everything right now. You can email us at social@freeandfriendlyfoods.com. If you're in the area and you need a bakery, we're in the San Francisco Bay Area. Look us up, check it out. We have a 5-star Yelp review, which I think is really cool. And then, of course, theallergychef.com for links to everything that we are doing, and you can see the services that we provide. Now, I do want to answer some questions that came in. If you have any kind of questions, please, now is the time to ask them. And let's see here. So yes, glitter is a great way to explain food allergies to people. The other cool thing that glitter can help people see, if you put glitter on your hands and then use hand sanitizer and try to wipe off glitter, it won't work. Whereas if you put glitter on your hands and wash them properly under the sink, it'll come off, or at least most of it will come off. And so people can physically see glitter, allergens, they make the connection. And let's see here. Substitutes for milk replacement for lactose intolerant. Okay, so dairy is a 1-to-1 substitute, which is really cool. So you can use any plant-based milk in place of cow's-based milk. So if a recipe calls for 1 cup of milk, use 1 cup of plant-based milk. The only time it's not a 1-for-1 is if they call for buttermilk, in which case you need to mix your plant-based milk with an acid to create the reaction before mixing it in to create something similar to buttermilk, but I promise it's never really the same. It's like, it'll get you there, but just, you know, give yourself a little bit of mercy and grace when you're cooking with it. And let's see. Okay, so if I said $20 a week, I apologize. It's supposed to be $20 a month on the savings account. Now, if $20 a month is a stretch, start with $5 a month, because that's still $60 a year. And over the course of your child's lifetime, like let's say you do it for 10 years, that's $600. $600 is nothing to sneeze at. Like, you can get them something nice when they need to move out, whether it be, so maybe they don't get the Vitamix, right? Maybe they get a decent blender and some pots and pans, basic kitchen stuff. $600 is still really great. So whether it be $5 a month, $10, $20 a month, whatever it is, whatever you can put aside for them, that's really the whole idea behind it, is that you're just putting something aside and you're forgetting about it so that it's really easy for them, or easier at least, and it doesn't hurt as much when they go to move out or go to college. And that's, honestly, that's a gift we've always tried to give our kids. One of our kids moved out and I got them some kitchen stuff, and, you know, but he actually went and lived with other people too, so it was a different situation. But then, of course, the others saw it and they were like, I can't wait to move out so you get me kitchen stuff too. I'm like, that's why you're moving out? So I buy you kitchen stuff? But okay. So, yeah. And then, let's see. I would say, you know, if you're a single parent, even if it's $10 every other month, $5 every other month, again, anything you can set aside, I think would be a gift. And something to even, you know, consider, if it's one child with the allergies who are moving out, maybe you give them some of your appliances and then you use some of that savings to replenish or, you know, downgrade something of yours so they take whatever. I'm sure you'll make it work. I know it's not always easy, especially in today's world. Oh my goodness, it's hard. Carlton works 2 full-time jobs, you guys. It's hard. So I get it. I totally, totally get it. Now, how do we entertain and do celebrations? I'm not sure what you mean, so I'll just sort of answer. When we have people over, we provide the food. So like we're the host, we provide everything. If our kids go somewhere, they take their food with them. I hope that answers the question. What brand? I'm not sure which of what, Tracy, what brand do we use? But that's the end. Tracy, if you're still here, let me know. And thank you, Jen. I'm glad you were able to enjoy the presentation. So again, my name is Kathlina. I'm the allergy chef, and I help people with severe food allergies, intolerances, and everything in between. You can check us out. TheAllergyChef.com has links to everything that we do. You can find us the most on social media would be Instagram at The Allergy Chef. All sorts of educational content. And, oh, what brands of pots and pans? Honestly, I'm all over the place. I don't have a brand that I stick with. We have some of the Epicurean line. We have some of the KitchenAid line. We have some of the Elo brand, the Calphalon, pretty much all of it. The key for me, Tracy, it has to look different. That's my first thing. In fact, when we got the new stove and the kids picked red, it immediately eliminated some of the items I could buy because it was like, I have to find this in red. And then I had to go looking everywhere to find it in red. And so we spent weeks hopping stores. Oh, look what I found. Look what I found. Can I tell you, do you know the hardest thing to find that looks different? Those thingamajigs that you use for pasta? Yeah. Getting 2 of those that look totally different. That was tough. Yeah, that's the kind of life I live. So having things that look completely different, and then of course something where I can write on the surface, those are going to be the biggest things. Now, recently, we had some pans where they were teal from an old thing that we did. And so one of the kids was like, hey, can we use this for allergens? And I'm like, sure, but because it's teal, the color of food allergies, you need to mark it really clearly. And so D is for dairy. They put D all over this pan. I mean, and he was so proud of himself. It was so cute. He goes, you're going to love what I did. And he shows it to me. He put a giant D on the bottom of the pan and then like 10 Ds around it. And then on the rim of the pan, because it's like a tall nonstick, it's about this tall, he put like 18 Ds all around the circle of it. And then on the handle, he's got 6 Ds. You look at the pan and all you see is the letter D. There's no mistaking the letter D. And so that really helps us visualize. We don't touch that for greatest common denominator cooking. And of course, it's outside the kitchen anyway in its own little separate space. So yeah, that's everything. And hey, Karen, that's such a cool thing. I'm so excited that this tied for one of your top presentations. Definitely, yeah, check us out on social media at The Allergy Chef. I tried to do the Facebook thing. You guys, I'm awful at it. It doesn't make sense to me. Instagram, I can sort of wrap my head around, so I do that as much as I can. But again, our Ray's website, that's where everything is, including that advanced recipe search that I showed you, which is right now the most powerful tool online anywhere for anyone with multiple food allergies and special diets. So check it out, rays.theallergychef.com. And that's it for me. No more questions. Oh, wait, Rachel Ray has colored pots and pans. Oh, do you know why I didn't buy them? Get this. When we first got the induction stove, I read some reviews that the Rachel Ray pans damaged someone's stove. And let me tell you, we had to spend an arm and a leg for that stove. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to buy a Rachel Ray pan. That's actually why I didn't buy it. And it wasn't one of those fake Amazon reviews. This was before the fake Amazon review, expose. They actually had pictures. You could see it. Like their stove got cracked from it. And then the Rachel Ray lids, they would crack kind of funny. So when I saw that, I was like, it's not worth it. Because I didn't want to have to like replace them and keep, always replacing. The brands that we have, again, the Calphalon, the Epicurious or Epicurean, whatever it's called, and Elo, and I think one other. Oh, KitchenAid. I haven't had any issues with them. No cracking, no weirdness. Over time, our stove has gotten a little funky, but mainly because I use the same eye over and over again. But beyond that, I think they've all done pretty well. If you're dairy-free, is there any cheese that tastes great, but that don't taste bad, like better than diet? So here's the thing on dairy-free cheese. There's a secret nobody tells you. 99% of it's made on shared equipment with dairy. So we only buy, right now, the shreds from Follow Your Heart. Those are the only ones that are free from equipment. If you go to our Raise website, raise.theallergychef.com, there's a space called Free Resources. Click on that and look through the different articles that we've written. One of them is called Dairy Free Swaps. We had actually gone through with the intention of making we've actually made safe product guides where we call thousands of companies to find out who has free from equipment. And we put together safe product guides. And I wanted to do one for dairy. I was like, this is going to be so great. I started calling all these companies, and every one of them shared equipment with dairy, shared equipment with dairy, shared equipment with blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what's the point, right? And in fact, even like, so Violife, right? One of the steps in their process exposes their product to shared equipment with dairy. With Kite Hill Foods, the yogurt, only the small yogurt cups are dairy-free equipment. You get the bigger size, it's not dairy-free equipment. And all of that is in that article. So I can't tell you, and personally, I can't eat it anyway. And on Raise, we do some recipes with dairy-free cheese, but we're starting to do a lot of recipes without dairy-free cheese because there's ways around it, right? There's little tricks and tips. In fact, one of the best recipes I've ever made for the kids, I think it's the coolest thing ever. It's cheese-free mac and cheese. They think it's like manna from heaven. And I'm like, there's not even dairy-free cheese in it. So there you go. You don't always need it. Are there any other questions? Type fast. Because there's this thing. Once I close the presentation, we can never come back. It's like it disappears, you guys. So, questions? Anyone? Questions? I'm pointing at the chat box. It doesn't look like it, but that's what I'm pointing at. All right, well, while I wait for questions, let's see. Let me give you guys a quick tour of Raise while we wait for more questions to come in. Let's see about that. I'm going to give you guys 1 more minute to ask your questions. 1 minute, counting down. I don't see any yet. So I will show you the website. Still waiting. Thomas, you are very welcome. Let me show you guys Raise while I wait for any more questions that come in. So this is the free resource area I was telling you about, free resources. We have these email courses you can take, and allergy inspiration, all sorts of articles, some of the replays, easy cooking videos. Product reviews are really great, you guys. If you're ever wondering, like, should I buy this product? Our kids eat it, and they tell you everything about it. So it's really cool. Coupons and discounts are pretty cool, too. These are all allergy-friendly companies that have given a discount, and you can save money. And we're still adding to this section. If you're corn-free, we are the leading source of truly corn-free recipes and information that's accurate anywhere on the internet. There's a trial membership. It's $5. You can give it a shot for a cup of coffee, that kind of a price. And you have access to some of the resources. You can try different things. You can try some of the diamond perks, some of the silver perks, some of the platinum perks, and kind of go through. Isn't that so adorable? That's kid 3 when he was little. All right. The recipe for your mac and cheese. Let me show it to you. If you go to Raise, just type in cheese free. This is the fastest way to find it. And it's this recipe. They think this is the coolest thing ever. It's here. This one's similar, but does use dairy-free cheese. But this is like their favorite thing ever right here. Let's see. Bonnie, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Any other questions? I think your minute's up, you guys, because my minute's up. There's a members area, and then non-recipe topics, because I didn't know what else to call it, where you can learn about all these different things that people with food allergies have to manage. And then there's an area for members. You get all these different perks with silver, and then platinum and diamond. They have extra features. Yeah, oh, cake is so cool, you guys, where you learn how to make all these different cakes that are free from, top 8 free. You learn how to decorate, and that's my whole thing. I love showing you what free from can really do. So a lot of transparency and honesty. You get to see it all. Yeah, okay, minute's up. I don't see any more questions. So have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you so much for everyone who joined and everyone in the future who watches the replay. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can shoot us an email, and have a fabulous, safe, and delicious weekend. Bye, everyone.